I tried. I watched him die.
Hello everyone, I'm Gavin, and welcome back to my series, Character Arcs. This series brings you deep dives into the development of different characters. Today we enter the world of The Walking Dead, discussing Glenn Rhee, who is the heart of this series and my favorite character for this world. Let's follow the journey and development of Glenn, who in my opinion has a very tragic character arc. And like always, there will be spoilers.
People you love, they made you who you are. They're still part of you. If you stop being you, that last bit of them that's still around inside, who you are, it's gone. Hershel, Maggie's father, was a great man. And he told me all I have to do is believe. And that's what I'm gonna do.
Glenn was born in the 1980s with his family being immigrants from Korea, living in Ohio, Michigan. Though by his 20s, he moves to Atlanta, Georgia, working as a pizza delivery driver. Not much is known about his career or goals. We know that Glenn came from loving parents and even has sisters, but his pizza delivery skills shows useful whenever the apocalypse happens, with him able to navigate the city in a zombie-infested world. When the outbreak first happens, we know fellow survivor T-Dog saves Glenn, with him right outside Atlanta. This is where they join the group of other survivors who stay in the mountains outside the city. Glenn assumes his family in Michigan he'll never see again, leaving him depressed. But this also allows him to find a new purpose with his group of survivors. He becomes a supply runner going back and forth from their camp in Atlanta. Though our first appearance of Glenn is in Season 1, Episode 1, Days Gone By, Rick finds himself trapped in a tank for us to hear Glenn radio over to him. Glenn at this point is young and sarcastic, even mentions video games a lot in the first season.
Hey, you. Dumbass. Yeah, you in the tank. You cozy in there?
He's very much of a kid navigating his way through the apocalypse. The entire series of The Walking Dead wouldn't even happen if Glenn didn't save Rick from that tank. Glenn has a very crucial role for the earlier seasons. We see how brave and trusting he is, having a sense of morality. We see this once Rick and Glenn become acquainted, and Rick asks why he saved him.
Back at the tank, why'd you stick your neck out for me?
Oh, that foolish, naive hope that if I'm ever that far up shit creek, somebody might do the same for me. Guess I'm an even bigger dumbass than you.
In Season 1, Episode 2, Guts, Rick depends very much on Glenn. He introduces Rick to half of his group with them trapped in Atlanta. Glenn being very crafty and Rick a good leader, they devise a plan to escape. The plan is for Glenn to Tokyo drift in the streets of Atlanta as a distraction to the walkers, giving the rest of the group a chance to escape in their vehicle. This plan works flawlessly, with Rick reuniting with his family and officially joining their group. All thanks to Glenn. It's clear how smart Glenn really is, coming up with many of the plans in Season 1. This is clear in Tell It to the Frogs, Episode 3 of Season 1. Rick asks for Glenn's help to retrieve Morrow and Rick's bag of guns that were left in Atlanta. In this episode, we see Glenn craft the perfect plan to complete their mission.
Look, that's the tank, 5 blocks from where we are now. That's the bag of guns. Here's the alley I dragged you into when we first met. That's where Daryl and I will go.
Why me?
Your crossbow is quieter than his gun. While Daryl waits here in the alley, I run up the street, grab the bag.
Would you got us elsewhere?
You and T-Dog, right? You'll be in this alley here.
2 blocks away, why?
I may not be able to come back the same way. Walkers might cut me off. If that happens, I won't go back to Daryl. I'll go forward instead, all the way around to that alley where you guys are. Whichever direction I go, I got you in both places to cover me. Afterwards, we'll all meet back here.
Hey, kid, what'd you do before all this?
Delivered pizzas? Why?
At this point in Glenn's journey, he is best described as enduring. He only thinks about the group he's a part of and taking on any risk and challenges he might face. Multiple times he puts himself at risk for his group, whom he grows closer with. Glenn still has his morality working very well with Rick, sharing the same goals and outlook of their world at this point.
Dale? You think Andrea's on her period? I'm only asking because it's like all the women are acting really weird. And I read somewhere that when women spend a lot of time together, their cycles line up and they all get super crazy hormonal at the same time.
This season is really the most crucial for his journey. We see the biggest growth and changes in Glenn during this time. The trajectory to everything he will become is due to his time on the farm. The characters that have the biggest impact for Glenn are Dale, Hershel, and Maggie. The three of them push him further into his development, becoming the man he needs to be for his group. Glenn at this point is very naive and young. We're introduced to the farm when Carl is shot on accident. Hershel takes in the group and saves Carl. This is where Glenn first meets Maggie. I think one of their first conversations they have says a lot about who Glenn is and who he's becoming.
Are you praying?
Why do you sneak up on people so much?
You're easy to sneak up on. Praying for what?
My friends. Looks like they could all use a little help right now. You gonna watch?
I know it's not my business, and feel free to believe in God. But the thing is, you gotta make it okay somehow. No matter what happens.
I'd say for Season 2, Glenn is best described as selfless. You see him really find strength in his allies, always willing to do his part. He clearly has a deep love and care for his group, looking at them as family. And for his family, he's willing to risk his life as much as possible. This is evident in Episode 4 of Season 2, Cherokee Rose. The group lowers Glenn into a well where a walker has fallen in, and hopes to conserve the water source.
We need live bait.
Oh, you people are crazy.
You want to get it out of your well or not?
Give us an eye there, Maggie.
Doing okay?
Yeah, doing great. Living the dream.
Though we see Glenn and Maggie grow close, they end up having relations when on a supply run, if you catch my drift. It seems like a random moment, but this is the start of their love story. Maggie tries to act like what happened meant nothing, confusing Glenn, but she confides in him, making him keep a secret about there being walkers in the barn. Glenn, hating secrets, tells the group about the walkers, which ends in the group cleaning out the barn, causing more tensions between Hershel and their group. Maggie feels betrayed by Glenn, but he stands by his choice, showing how he's willing to make the hardest decisions for the betterment of everyone else. Again, showing how selfless and caring he is for everyone, even if it's against Maggie's wishes.
Okay, I had to tell them.
You did not!
No, I did. Okay, I wanted to. You see, I forgot. Okay, I forgot. Or I stopped thinking about it, or maybe I didn't want to think about it. I let them lower me into that well like it was fun. Like I was playing Portal. It's a video game.
Of course, it's a video
And then the pharmacy happened yesterday, and I realized something. I forgot that they're dangerous. I don't care if they're sick people or dead people. They're dangerous. And then I realized something else. That I don't want you in danger, ever. So I hate to blow your dad's big secret, but I'm sick of secrets. Secrets get you killed. And I'd rather have you pissed off at me and alive than liking me and dead.
There's also another moment between Glenn and Maggie that I think is noteworthy. Maggie does confess her love to Glenn, which initially scares him. But it's what she sees in Glenn that his group refuses to see. He's smart, strong, and a leader, which is why Rick always uses him for backup in the earlier seasons. I like how much she believes in him, which really builds him up to be something more. I really have to agree with Maggie here. He's the group's go-to guy. Need someone to be a diversion? Glenn. Need somebody to go down a well with a walker? Get Glenn. Somebody has to get hit with a baseball bat? Wait. You die! At this point, Glenn does have a strong moral compass, but the closer he gets to Maggie, the more questionable it is. His change in character is evident in Season 2, Episode 8, Nebraska. Glenn starts prioritizing his group over other lives, and even grows fearful now having something to live for. Glenn starts thinking about Maggie seriously, that he can build something with her. You see the struggle in him when he confides in Rick on their way to find Hershel at the local bar.
Maggie says she loves me.
Glenn, it's
Hold
pretty
on.
obvious to everyone Maggie loves you, and not just because you weren't at the last man standing. So what's the problem?
I didn't say it back. I've never had a woman say that to me before. You know, except my mom, of course, and my sisters.
Hey, this is a good thing. Something we don't get enough of these days. Enjoy it.
Rick tells him to embrace the good things, which does give Glenn more reason to just be the go guy for his group. You can see Glenn trying to find a purpose in their world. With his love for Maggie, he's starting to see his greater role in their group. Glenn and Rick find Hershel at the local bar, trying to retrieve him to return to the farm. Though this is where they come across other survivors, which ends in a gunfight. Glenn shows his first sign of fear, always being brave for those he loves. In the middle of the fight, he hides, thinking about Maggie.
Are you it? No. It's all right. The car's right there. We're almost home.
Glenn at this point in his journey can be best described as unsure. His values and viewpoints are starting to change. Having this new love for Maggie causes him to evaluate his position on things. And this does come to a head with him disagreeing with Dale in episode 9 of the season, Triggerfinger. In this episode, the group is trying to decide what to do with Randall, another survivor from a different group whom they're holding captive. The group is trying to decide if they should kill him or let him live.
Well, if people believe we should spare him, I want to know.
Well, I can tell you it's a small group. Maybe just me and Glenn.
Look, I think you're pretty much right about everything all the time, but this...
They've got you scared.
Going around circles. You just want to go around circles again?
This is a young man's life. And it is worth more than a 5-minute conversation. Please. Let's just do what's right.
They fear Randall being alive will bring more risk to their group. We see everyone agree to kill him, even Glenn and Hershel. Dale in the first 2 seasons serves as the morality of the group, the voice of reason. Glenn looks to Dale always for guidance and answers, which is where his sense of morality stems from. At this point, even Hershel isn't the moral compass for their group, with Hershel currently struggling with the fact that the walkers are truly lost and not just sick. In this debate about Randall's fate, Glenn sides with Rick, with Dale being the only one in the group to stand by his moral code. Though this soon leads to Dale's death, with the walker getting the best of him. Quick side note. The scene has always bothered me. I don't understand how this walker kills him so easily, tearing his stomach open. How does a decomposed walker have the strength to do this easily? I guess that's where the suspension of disbelief comes in? And if you know anything about the show's history, Dale's death wasn't a creative choice, but due to the network changing producers in the season, which is why the actor that played Dale decided to leave the show. This is why the death has always seemed sudden to me, and maybe just random to the narrative. But Dale's death is used in the best way possible for other characters. Glenn regrets standing against Dale on the topic of Randall's fate. This is where we see Glenn start to rethink about his perspective and his stance morally. Dale's death was heavy on Glenn for him to rethink his view on their world. And lastly, Hershel's and Glenn's relationship is huge for Glenn's development. Once Dale dies, we see Glenn really lean on Hershel for the rest of the series, until he becomes his own leader. Glenn is searching for his own identity and purpose among their group. Loving Maggie leads him to desire being more. His moral compass isn't completely solid though, as we'll see later in Season 3. But Hershel gives Glenn and other major characters the guidance they need, with Hershel becoming the voice of reason in their group, replacing what Dale was, which ultimately becomes his legacy. Glenn is getting more of a sense of his identity once Hershel accepts him into his family. Understanding his love for Maggie, he gives him a watch which serves as Glenn's identity in faith and morality. It will serve as a memory to Hershel later in the series and remind Glenn who he's supposed to be.
When we were in that bar and afterwards, I thought about a lot of things. If you become a father someday, you'll understand. No man is good enough for your little girl. Until one is. Go on now, before I change my mind about you.
The farm is destroyed with walkers taking over the place. The group is spread apart, with Glenn and Maggie driving on their own. This is where he confesses his love for her, finally knowing where he belongs. His purpose is surviving for Maggie, and not just the group. At this point, Glenn is best described as independent. Glenn knows who he wants to be for Maggie, becoming stronger for her and their group. We see this new development in Glenn when he confronts Rick about keeping secrets from their group. Rick knew that everyone becomes a walker after they die. Glenn argues that he told the group about the walkers in the barn to protect everybody, questioning Rick's leadership. Glenn early on this season proves to be a helpful hand for the group, with them taking the prison as their new home, cleaning out the walkers. Glenn's love for his group is clear in episode 3 of the season, Say the Word. Glenn's digging graves for Lori, T-Dog, and Carol, who was thought to be dead. Hershel finds them for Glenn to confess that he wished they killed all the prisoners early on, to ensure their group's safety, knowing his feelings are wrong. I especially like this scene because we see Hershel comfort Glenn, guiding him to stay good. Glenn has grown so much as his own leader at this point, struggling to keep certain values. Hershel this season works to keep the group's humanity, helping Rick in the same way.
Part of me wishes that we killed all the prisoners on sight.
Axel and Oscar seem like good guys.
You know, when the evacuation started, T-Dog drove his church van to the home of every senior he knew, just in case they needed a ride. He saved my ass 1,000 times. He wasn't just a good guy. He's the best.
Got bit closing the gate. If you hadn't done that.
Could have been Maggie. It's wrong, but I'd trade any number of people for one of ours any day.
Glenn and Maggie go out for a supply run, coming across Marl, who was thought to be long dead. Marl captures them and brings them to Woodbury, the governor's settlement. The governor finds the group as a threat, wanting info on the prison. Glenn refuses for a walker to be set on him as punishment. Though ultimately, Maggie gives info to the governor about their group, with them threatening to kill Glenn. And after this point, Glenn is best described as rageful. He's willing to kill others in the name of war, not standing by the morals Dale or Hershel have entrusted him with. We know Glenn is willing to kill those not infected, with him and Maggie devising a plan to escape Woodbury. The group saves them and they escape the governor's grasp. His rage continues, with Glenn angry that Rick didn't kill the governor. Conflict arises in the group, with Glenn against Marl joining their group again. We can see how his rage is blinding his previous morals. During the mission, Rick ensured the safety of his group rather than killing the governor. Glenn is always about protecting the group, but doesn't see clearly.
You didn't kill him.
That's not why we went back.
No. That's right, you went back for Daryl. And now he's gone again, and the governor is still alive.
Daryl was the priority.
I should have been there with you.
You were in no condition.
But my girlfriend was?
Glenn, this isn't about us.
Yeah. I should have been there.
Hey, you didn't come back with us because you could barely walk.
What about her?
About me, Glenn,
Do you know what he did to her? Do you know?
Let's go!
After all that effort, all the risk we took, Daryl just takes off with Merle.
He had his reasons.
Yeah. You keep telling yourself that, Rick. Doesn't change the fact that we're up to our necks in shit.
You want me to turn the car around, beg him to come back, throw down a welcome mat from Merle? This is the hand we've been dealt!
Glenn is very serious about killing the governor, wanting war, but he comes to his senses, discussing with Hershel about the watch he gave him. Glenn realizes what the watch means. Glenn asks for Hershel's blessing to marry Maggie, to which he agrees. The watch is a symbol for Glenn, being a sign of morality and goodness. It serves for Glenn to live up to the thing he wants to be the man he needs to be for Maggie, Hershel, and the group. Glenn is very much about faith, like Hershel, believing in goodness and truth, not letting a dark world decide who they are.
This rage is going to get you killed.
When you gave me this, I didn't fully understand what it meant. Such a simple thing. I know what it means now. I know what it takes. I want to marry Maggie. And we don't have to have a wedding. I don't even know if it'll last a week, but I want her to know. Before, who knows?
You have my blessing.
At this point in his journey, he's best described as mature. He's learned his lessons from blind rage, knowing he needs to be self-controlled and focused to be the best version of himself. He doesn't want to take for granted anything Dale or Hershel has taught him, choosing those values to be the things that shapes him. He's ready to be a husband to Maggie and be the man she needs in their dying world. He proposes to her for Maggie to say yes. Glenn is officially married to Maggie, calling her his wife. For the first half of the season, Glenn gets deadly sick with the flu going around. Hershel attends to him along with others that are sick in the prison. Glenn almost dies from the sickness, but Hershel and Maggie are able to stabilize him to recover. In this scene, you really see how much they love him, with him being part of their family.
Dad!
Hold his arms down. Stay with us. Stay with us.
You're gonna be okay. We're gonna be okay.
Though the governor attacks the prison, killing Hershel and causing the group to spread apart in the middle of a conflict, Glenn, still recovering from his sickness, is put on a bus by Maggie to escape the prison that has become a battleground. But Glenn gets off the bus and searches for her before being knocked out by a tank's explosion. By the time Glenn wakes up, everyone has left the prison with the fighting over and the governor dead. Glenn, with riot gear and supplies, storms out of the zombie-infested prison, coming across Tara, who once worked with the governor. They agree to work together and escape the prison, though this is when Glenn learns about Hershel being killed by the governor, devastating him.
I trusted him. And then he just killed that old man.
Hershel? Wait, was his name Hershel?
Sorry.
Glenn passes out from exhaustion, and a new group picks them up. This group is Rosita, Eugene, and Abraham. Glenn fights Abraham because Abraham wants him to join the mission to save the world. Eugene is lying to Abraham, saying he knows a cure to the walkers, but Glenn wants no part of the mission, only wanting to find Maggie. This difference leads them to fight. Glenn finds a message in blood left from Maggie, giving him more hope, telling him to go to the mysterious terminus, which is supposed to be a safe haven. Glenn and Tara break off from Abraham's group to go down a dangerous train tunnel that's full of walkers, but Glenn is willing to take this risk to ensure that he finds Maggie. Going down this dark and dangerous way, Tara's foot gets stuck under a rock, with walkers coming in close. Glenn refuses to leave Tara's side, even if it means dying. This shows the goodness that's still in Glenn, willing to die for others. It seems like the end for Glenn until a wave of gunfire saves them.
If you got this off me, I can't run. And if you help me, they're gonna get both of us.
There's gotta be a way. I'm not leaving. I'm not leaving.
Get out of here!
No.
Glenn and Maggie are finally reunited. At this point in his journey, Glenn's best described as good, and Glenn now serves the moral compass for the group throughout the rest of the series. He wears the values that Dale and Hershel have put in him, never forgetting but remembering every lesson from them. This is evident when Glenn fixes an RV for Abraham, which is something Dale taught him long ago.
Hey, Which one?
The flathead. Radiator hose clamp is always a flathead. Here, you do it. Learn something.
All we need is another battery.
Where the hell are we gonna find another battery?
Right over here.
How'd you know those were there?
The group gets accidentally reunited at Terminus, being captured by the group of cannibals. Under Rick's leadership, they break out with Glenn getting a foreshadowed death from the hands of a baseball bat. Though as they're escaping Terminus, they hear other survivors trapped in large containers. Rick says to leave them behind, but Glenn argues otherwise, wanting to keep good virtues among their group. Rick then agrees, freeing the survivors in the container.
We gotta let those people out. That's still who we are. It's gotta be.
The group continues struggling to survive, but are really good at it, showing no mercy to those who prove untrustworthy. Most of the group has abandoned the moral code of the old world, with Glenn being one of the only ones who hasn't killed a human. We know Glenn wants to keep the virtues he was taught, but grows depressed in the season because of Beth's death, Maggie's sister. Once Beth dies at the hands of another group, he goes in a dark descent along with Maggie. He's depressed, feeling as if nothing matters anymore, with the group out on the road for survival. There's also another moment. It's small, but something I think is very important to point out. The group is hiding out in a church where Glenn sees the Bible verse, Galatians 6:9, out on the wall. The verse says a lot about Glenn's journey and his development throughout this season. The group is struggling majorly this season, losing loved ones with no real end goal besides staying alive. But there's two moments of the season I like to point out. There's episode 10 of the season where the group comes across a pack of dogs with them all starving. They kill the dogs for food, and later in this episode it starts raining miraculously. For some of the group, they are very thankful and surprised, while others look cold. Then by the end of the season they find Alexandria, which proves to be the group's home for the rest of the series. Now let's look back at Galatians 6:9. It reads, "And let us not grow weary of doing good, for in due season we will reap if we do not give up." That verse proves to be true for Glenn and their group. The verse is saying not to give up and keep fighting, for if we do, there will be a blessing nearby. And it's exactly what happens for the group. They fight and survive and are blessed with Alexandria ultimately, and given everything needed to make it there. And for Glenn, this restores his faith by the end of the season, which he will see later. But during the journey to Alexandria, he struggles greatly. And when they come across Aaron later in the season, he's the first one to trust him because he has faith, which is something the rest of the group has lost. Their lack of faith is evident with what Maggie has to say back in the church, after Rick's group kills the Terminus leader in the most brutal fashion. Maggie and Glenn watch their people kill them ruthlessly as they look broken. The scene really captures the group's struggle of faith and goodness, and this scene predates the death of Beth, with their group only growing worse after losing her.
This is the Lord's house.
No. It's just four walls and a roof.
And at this point in his journey, Glenn is best described as restored. Even if he struggles with his faith and holding on to humanity, he shows signs of compassion and trust, with him continuing to help guide Rick, who has grown very bitter.
I can't give up everything else. I know what I said. But it does matter.
Deep down, Glenn hangs on to goodness and doesn't let the world compromise him at this point. He chooses to be strong in his teaching and grows as a strong leader in his own right. Their group makes it to Alexandria, with them getting new jobs and roles to comply to. Glenn is a supply runner, having plenty of experience in it. Though Glenn quickly fights with the leaders, Aiden and Nicholas, thinking of them as foolish for risking other lives during their training. Aiden, tired of Glenn questioning him, tries to fight him, which quickly backfires.
You three need new gigs? Not ready for runs yet.
Yeah, pretty sure you got that backwards.
Hey. Hey. Look, we got a way of doing things around here.
You tied up walkers.
It killed our friend! Look, I'm not having this conversation. You obey my orders out there.
Oh, then we're just as screwed as your last run crew.
Say that again.
You'll back off, Aiden.
Come on, man. Just take a step back.
Come on, tough guy.
No one's impressed, man. Walk away.
Hey! What is going on?
This guy's got a problem with the way we do things.
Why'd you let these people in? Because we actually know what we're doing out there.
Glenn at this point is best described as strong. For most of the series, his group has underestimated him, but he proves to be strong enough as his own leader, which is something Maggie has always seen in him. Glenn isn't perfect though, and struggles with keeping his moral compass that he's been taught, and even his rage, like from season 3. This is evident when Noah, Glenn, Aiden, and Nicholas go on a supply run. Aiden dies for the other 3 to try to escape the scenario. Nicholas, being a coward, abandons Glenn and Noah, causing Noah's death.
This is the only way. No, it's not gonna break. It will. Hold it. Nicholas, go! Nicholas!
Don't let go.
Glenn is shooken about Noah's death, telling Nicholas that he can never go on a different supply run for the safety of others. Nicholas, feeling disrespected, lures Glenn out from Alexandria and attempts to kill him, but Glenn gets the upper hand, ready to kill Nicholas, who begs for his life. This struggle in Glenn is more evident with him wanting to pull the trigger, but it ends up sparing his life, deciding his good virtues.
You tried to kill me? I was scared. I don't belong up here. Shut up. I was scared. I was just scared. Shut up. I don't belong. Shut up! I don't belong out here. I don't. Shut up.
Glenn shows how strong his morals are in this scene by sparing Nicholas, having every reason to kill him. But we see in Season 6 that Nicholas respects Glenn and follows his every move. This change in Nicholas says a lot about Glenn's mercy. With him choosing to do good, it's given Nicholas a chance to redeem himself, and it really says a lot about who Glenn has become at this point.
This was supposed to be a dress rehearsal.
I'm supposed to be delivering pizzas, man.
During this season, Glenn has proven to be his own leader, leading smaller groups against a large herd of walkers they face. He also tries to put a lot of faith in Nicholas to redeem himself. This is where Glenn almost meets his fate in episode 3 of this season, Thank You. Glenn and Nicholas get cut off from the rest of the group, facing a large group of walkers. Nicholas tells Glenn thank you before unaliving himself. Nicholas feels at peace with the opportunity Glenn gave him. His mercy allowed Nicholas to become this person.
Nicholas! Look at me!
Thank you.
Glenn turns out to be alive and assisted with a girl named Enid. Enid is struggling with depression herself, trying to find a purpose. We see Glenn become firm with her, telling her why she should fight and hang on to hope. And what Glenn tells her is one of his best lines in the entire series.
When I wanted to run, you said, that's how you lose people. Even after they're gone. What the hell does that mean?
People you love. They made you who you are. They're still part of you. If you stop being you, that last bit of them that's still around inside, who you are, it's gone.
Who are those people to you?
Hershel, Maggie's father, was a great man. And he told me all I have to do is believe. And that's what I'm gonna do.
This is a good reflection of who Glenn is and his entire journey. Glenn at this point can be best described as hopeful. He believes in his virtues and in the world they're building. He trusts in the identity he's made and has grown as a strong leader in his own right. And this is where the tragedy of Glenn Rhee begins. Glenn and Maggie are finally taking the next step with her being pregnant. This says a lot about them when comparing them to season 5 when they were cold and dark after Beth's death. They are ready to build something now and have a strong future together, and Glenn better explains this to Abraham.
When you were pouring the Bisquick, you trying to make pancakes?
Yes. Okay, yeah, it's something that we talked about, yeah.
Yeah.
Why?
No, I just... given the precarious state of affairs on any given Sunday, I am damn near floored that you or anyone else would have the cojones to make a call like that.
I mean, well, we're trying to build something. Me and her. All of us.
Next, we see a very powerful moment between Maggie and Glenn, with them seeing an ultrasound of their future son, Hershel. It really shows the big hopes they have for their future, not realizing the terror coming upon them. And it's the big hope that leads Glenn down to break the moral code he's been living by. Glenn's journey is coming close to an end, with them about to cross the Saviors. In the 12th episode of the season, not tomorrow yet, Glenn and the group go to the Saviors' outpost to get the advantage with a preemptive strike. Under Rick's leadership, Glenn has committed to killing a human. His first kill is a defenseless Savior who is sleeping, and this proves to be a challenging thing for him to do. It's everything he stands against in his development, which further shows that our group has gone too far, with Rick growing an ego. It's this decision that ultimately leads to Negan retaliating against their group. The group gets captured by Negan eventually, with someone having to pay the price. Season 6 ends on a painful cliffhanger, with Abraham dying first. And we can really see that Glenn and their group has made a terrible mistake. And this is the last point in his journey, with him being best described as compromised. At first, Glenn doesn't really know who he's trying to be in the earlier seasons, but after Dale and Hershel's death, he finds his identity and proves that you could still have good values in their dark world, which will be the same conclusion Rick has after Carl's death when he spares Negan. But it's just really hard to see Glenn break everything that he's built.
Maggie?
On your knees! I should just put you out of your misery right now.
No! Stop it! God! Don't!
Glenn's final episode is Season 7, Episode 1, The Day Will Come When You Won't Be. Abraham is revealed to be killed, with Daryl punching Negan in anger. This leads Negan to punish the group by killing someone else. And this someone else is Glenn, who meets the brutality of Lucille.
Back to it. I'll find you.
I'll be honest about something here. This death made me hate The Walking Dead, and I can go on a long tangent why. It's not the death that upsets me, but the build-up for it. You'll argue that his death was faithful to the comics, which it was, but they did not build his character arc for this moment. Abraham's death does make more sense, however, with him sharing a moment of Eugene and Rosita having closure. But everything built up for Glenn almost seems meaningless or cheap shock value, and I think most viewers would agree, with the viewership plummeting after this episode. The way they treated his death upset many viewers, including myself. Deaths are always sad, but when you kill a character off and not give them the proper treatment, it alienates your audience, which is what happened with many, agreeing that Seasons 7 and 8 are very weak, with the show recreating itself by Season 9. I mean, just look at his character arc. He finds values in his loved ones, living with goodness in his heart. And what does he do? He betrays himself and compromises everything he is, and then he dies tragically. Maybe him betraying his values is the consequences he pays with his life? I'm not sure what the show is really trying to tell us with his death. His death just feels as if they're betraying the audience, not giving Glenn the proper sit-out he deserves. He's a legacy character that is constantly overlooked. Oh, you're not convinced yet? Well, let's look at Hershel's death. It's sad and traumatic, but it doesn't push an audience away, but gets them more invested. And the ratings reflect that, with his death marking the peak of The Walking Dead, or even Shane's death. They told a complete story, with their death being hard to watch, but fulfilling to the story. An audience finds closure in their death, and motivates the characters around them to continue developing their journeys. But Glenn's death is the catalyst for the rest of the series, pushing him in an all-out war by Season 8. I do enjoy the scene between Rick and Michonne in Season 7, with Rick saying he couldn't save Glenn. Scenes like this I first missed in my first watch after quitting, but after rewatching everything complete, I appreciate them noting what Glenn did for Rick, and what it means for the rest of the series.
Thinking about my friends. Glenn saved me. Right at the start. I couldn't save him.
But that's the tragic character arc of Glenn Rhee. He started off naive and young in a zombie-infested world. He found value and strength in the group he survived with, whom became his family. People like Dale and Hershel he leaned on and learned a lot from. Their death shaped him and helped him form his identity. He proves faithful to these virtues that are hard to carry in their dark world, until he doesn't. The moment he decides against this, it proves to be the very thing that kills him, a very tragic and unfulfilling end to one of my favorite characters of The Walking Dead. His watch further proves to be a symbol of his virtues and legacy, with it being handed down to Enid. Well, I hope you all enjoyed the video. I really want to do every episode of this series to the best of my ability. This show has a huge impact on me, and I just want to honor every character I talk about. Thank you for following this channel. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below, or comment on who you would like to see next on this series. It could be a Walking Dead character or something completely different. Really just like to hear back from y'all. Can't wait to bring you the next episode of this series. I'm Gavin, and this was the character arc of Glenn Rhee. Until next time, peace.